You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call, as today your Indiana Hoosiers beat Marquette 100-97 to keep a terrific IU sports weekend rolling. This moves IU to 2-0 on the season, a game that they really seized control of in the latter part of the first half thanks to some just electric play by Tucker DeVries. Marquette made a little run at him in the second half, and Lamar Wilkerson took over and did his part in the second, but a really solid performance all around with a number of guys having to be pressed into more extended minutes than they expected due to your standard early season, let's call everything officiating. But as I said, IU goes to 2-0 on the season, and we're excited to break it down for you here today. I'm Andy Bottoms here with a large cast today. We got Ryan Phillips, we got the coach Brian Tonsoni, we got Coach Bob Moats. So we only got Ryan for a little bit due to the NFL, so we'll try to utilize our time with him as best we can, but we are looking forward to breaking it all down for you today. And with that, we will start this show the way we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And really any number of plays from the first half could have been the banner moment. DeVries was just absolutely unconscious for long stretches of the half. But, you know, IU was trying to check the score here. They were down 13-11 after Marquette had made a three. Then DeVries makes 2 threes in a row, then gets a rebound and kind of slow played Marquette into thinking he was just going to pull the ball out. Let Trent Sisley just run by everybody, made a great pass to him to be able to get there and you know, kind of quick 8-2 run, put IU on top, and they really, I don't believe, ever relinquished the lead from that point. There were multiple stretches late in the half where he just made terrific shot after terrific shot, and when he wasn't raining shots on, he was making great passes to set up teammates. Just a really impressive half. He ends up with 24 points in the first half, played all 20 minutes because of some of the foul trouble, and he was absolutely gassed at the end of the half there. I think he may have made the smart play to like drip some of his own sweat on the floor, then call for somebody to come and clean it up just to give himself a little bit of extra breather. But just a tremendous half from him. And that really gave IU what ended up being, I believe, an 18-point halftime lead that I don't believe ever got lower than 10 in the second half. So Tucker DeVries, definitely the banner moment from this game, although lots of great moments that we'll break down for you here. But our banner moment today, as always, brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, now in their 10th season sponsoring the Assembly Call, and their 4th as a presenting sponsor for the Back Home Network. As you know, Home Field has the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you will find anywhere. Since IU is their flagship school, you know more high-quality gear with unique IU logos from the past is always right around the corner. We had the Game Breaker jackets come out late last week. They released a Refuse to Lose t-shirt in the afterglow of the Penn State win yesterday. And tons of other great IU stuff has come out in recent weeks as the football Hoosiers roll on. So lots of great stuff there, getting into that point of the year when you start thinking about your holiday shopping and all of those kinds of things. And I know it's always one of the first places I go, whether that is to make a list of things that I want or to go to shop for others. So definitely look forward to that. They do usually have some sales at that time, so make sure that you sign up for their email and text alerts, and make sure that if you've not ordered yet from them, you can use our promo code HOME23 to get 15% off your entire first order. Again, that's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, that website, homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right. And with that, it is time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. And Ryan, since we only have you for a little bit, I will throw it to you first for your thoughts on today's game.
Yeah, I think that the one thing was very impressive to me today. And this is the Marquette, you know, isn't at the height they were the last few years, but they have a good program and some really good players. And I think the way Indiana was able to take control of this game, and they did it methodically. It wasn't like a 25-2 run. They just sort of slowly built up the lead methodically. They'd give some ground back and then they'd answer back. I think the thing that impressed me the most was how, and it's so different from what we've seen for a long time. We're going to keep harping on that, but very different approach than we've seen for a long time, was their ability to get a great look and hit an open three to staunch the Marquette's momentum consistently, whether it was Wilkerson or DeVries. Somebody was getting open and getting a really good look at a three that then they make, and it stops that run cold. And three-pointers have a way of doing that. It's a demoralizing psychological thing when you're trying to make a run and another team can answer with a big three. It's like a big dunk. It can change momentum in a second. And they had that several times today. Wilkerson had a couple in the second half, and that game could have gone a much different way without hitting some of those big shots because Marquette was getting momentum. Indiana in really deep foul trouble, and we can talk about that later on. But really, really bad foul trouble. They were able to pull it out and continue to not only hold the lead, but expand it because they were making big shots and they were willing to take those big shots. And I mean, we've seen it through the preseason. We've seen it through, the summer exhibitions, and now we're seeing it through the first two games. If you give DeVries or Wilkerson an inch, they will hit that shot. They are not afraid to take it, and they will, if they have any room whatsoever, they will hit it in your face. And I think that seeing that repeatedly today shows that that's not just a good game. That's who these guys are. And so that just should make people even more excited to watch that all year. Yes, this team has some shortcomings on the inside. They got to get better at guarding without fouling, although today I don't think that would have mattered. But I do think that the ability to hit big shots in key situations is going to be what fuels this team moving forward. And they've got multiple guys who can do it. We've seen it from DeVries and Wilkerson early. I think there's going to be other guys that can do it. Dorn, when he's healthy, is certainly a guy who can do it. That just makes you that much more difficult to guard, and it opens everything up for everyone else. And so the ability to knock down those big shots was the key today for me, and they consistently did it all game.
Yep, Coach Moats, I'll throw it to you next for your opening thoughts.
We played the walk-ons in the last minute of a neutral site game against Marquette, and we were winning. I mean, let that sink in for a minute of what that actually means to this program over the last decade. That that we actually got to the point in these types of games where we were comfortable basically saying, okay, let's just not let our starter roll an ankle, and bringing in guys that are not going to get a whole lot of time, almost like a bye game. So that to me was, kind of as I'm taking this away, of just kind of showing me just how dominant this performance was in so many ways. Ryan hit the nail on the head of being methodical and just basically being present for 40 minutes. We didn't see a massive lapse of 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 8 minutes of play. They stayed locked in. They kept defending. I think the big thing, we'll talk about the offense, we'll talk about the defense, but just how disruptive they were to Marquette defensively. They were in passing lanes. Yeah, they fouled a bunch. That's going, but they still found a way to continue to be that disruptive against Marquette, even when they had multiple guys with 4 fouls on the floor at the same time. And I think that's something where if you look at the passing lanes, you look at how they were kind of peel switching, how their help was, I mean, their second line of defense was so much better than Marquette's. I mean, IU basically was able to roast their second line of defense all day long. How many times did IU get a run out in that press break and they were behind the defense and you get a dunk? How many times did you see Conaway or Enright driving off the slot and you saw a guy diving, whether it was Sisley, whether it was Alexis? I think Bailey got one. And you got a guy kind of just cutting in quickly just for easy lob for an easy do too. So they were beating up Marquette's second line. IU second line was at least causing them frustration and difficulty, which made their shots more challenging, which explains why IU had another reason why I explained IU had a much better shooting performance than Marquette. IU out-defended a Shaka Smart team in so many ways. This is a great day for IU. This is a great day for just to kind of start the era. And I think a couple was already kind of noted. This team has gone from 40th in KenPom a week ago. This win got them to 21st, and it's that volatile time in KenPom. And I'm looking at Andy and Coach here thinking, early stages in bracketology, and you're having these conversations of potential signature wins. This is one that can be on the resume and also gets you more into the national conversation early on in the season to be like, okay, well, Indiana may be better than the national intelligentsia thought we were when the season started.
Yes, sir. Coach Tonsoni, your thoughts on the win today?
It's just a remarkable start for Coach DeVries to win, against Alabama A&M. Expected maybe the style and all that we were very happy with, and then you come into today and everyone was saying, we'll see how much does this play when you play someone who's talented, and Marquette has talent, has speed, has the ability to play basketball, is expected to be in the mix for a tournament run and in the top 3 or 4, possibility in the Big East. So this was, I thought, going to be a nail biter all the way along, and was preparing myself somewhat, to how am I going to respond if they happen to lose? And you guys have said it, methodically built the lead. Handled a couple things. They handled some runs too. Once they got the lead, 4-0 run to start the half, they answered it. Then after the first timeout in the second half, a 6-0 run. Then it eventually got down to 10. And that's where the experience, which hasn't been counted on by a lot of people. Everyone says these guys are moving up from lower leagues, but they have a lot of experience, and I think that showed today. And I think, I'm going to talk offense at some point today because you have to talk offense, but I was really pleased with the defense. They adjusted at about the 8-9 minute mark when the fouls were going on. They backed off the pressure a little bit. Still were guarding, but they were trying to get their hands away from the defender, and I thought that was a call from the bench. I don't know if that was just a player adjustment, but it seemed like strategy-wise, and they were switching that little weave DHO at the top and catching people in the lane as opposed to trying to turn and hip them and stay with their man. So they were giving a little more help in that situation. That was a switch that I thought really helped the foul trouble. That will need to be figured out. And then the other thing for me is I can watch Coach DeVries coach on the sidelines. Every time Indiana would hit a 3, he'd be really, demonstrative on the sideline, imploring them to play defense and in the second half get some rebounds, as they gave up 9 offensive rebounds in the second half. And I think Coach is really into the game. And he's teaching and coaching, and someone said, I'm sorry, I can't remember who to give credit for in the chat, really managed the foul situation well, and played people with 2 fouls, played people with 3 or 4 fouls, and was able to get through the game with only 1 disqualification. So while the offense is good, everyone's going to love the 100 points. I love the defense. Because this team was quick. This team shares the basketball, and they're one of the better offensive systems that we'll see in college basketball, and I thought we just throttled that.
Yeah, so Ryan, let's talk offense first. As Coach said, I do want to get back to some of the defense and just the way that they manage some of those situations. But a couple stretches I'll note before I turn it over to you to talk about this. I mean, there was a stretch at one point, kind of mid to late first half. IU scored on 8 straight possessions. They had 18 points on 8 straight possessions. Then they had a brief lull where they didn't score for 3 in a row, even though they got some good shots. And then they score 14 on the last seven trips. I mean, so they just over the last kind of half of the half from a possession standpoint, they're 32 points on 18 possessions. And I just thought they really settled in well. I think it took a little bit to get used to the way that Marquette was pressuring them, but then they started to be able to take advantage of that as the half went on and be able to use some of that against them. Certainly DeVries shooting lights out was a big factor in that. But, as we get into our 40 minutes in the hall or the United Center, as the case may, or 40 minutes in Bloomington or in Chicago, as the case may be today, that offensive kind of, whether it's adjustments or just settling into the game a little bit as the first half went on, was really what allowed them to methodically build that lead up and really had solved a lot of things for Marquette. So what stood out to you offensively during those stretches?
Well, if Shaka Smart turns the pressure off, the full court pressure off, and is not pressuring the ball as much, you're doing something right. Because I think that early on, and Tom Crean on the broadcast, hey Tom, hope you're well, was mentioning they're going side to side too much, and it's taking too much time. They got a 10-second violation at one point. Then they kind of figured it out and were able to get through it, no problem. And I think having so many ball handlers on the team and in the rotation is really anybody can take it up. You can trust anyone with the ball, trust anyone with a pass. And I think that really was part of it. And then, yeah, you're right. They just settled into the game. This is early season for them too. They're going to have some disjointed starts. I think the offenses both looked a little off early, and you're playing in an unfamiliar gym and all of that stuff. So I think that it did take a little time for them to settle in, but once they did, you're right. They just methodically tore them apart. And the way you scored 100 points on Marquette, who's a team that's known for their defensive ability. And Shaka Smart is a defensive guy. And so I think the way they did it was with so much cutting and movement, and that's what they were doing. This was not individual play. This was the whole team working together. It had 27 assists on 33 made field goals in the game. I mean, the ball was moving and the players were moving, and you only have 8 guys in the rotation. And really it was 7, because especially in the first half, because Bailey went out early with 2 fouls. He played, I think, the first 3 minutes and then was out with 2 fouls. When you have a reduced rotation and you're tiring the other team out, that is what is impressive. And it's all based on the movement offensively. And there were points, and you mentioned late in the half that they had that run where they played really well. About a minute or two before that, they looked a little worn out. They looked a little tired. They looked a little slow. And I don't know what switched there. Maybe it's just a second wind, but they really started pushing it towards the end of the half. And of course, it was capped by Enright's half quarter, which I'm sure he meant to do that. But I think it's they outdid what Marquette does, which is put pressure on you, and they flipped the script and put so much pressure on Marquette defensively. They were lost a lot, and that's a good defensive team. I know they're young, but that's a team that prides itself on defense, and they made them look completely out of sorts. I mean, you had DeVries getting open, which should never happen if you're Marquette, and they were finding ways to get him open. And again, I said earlier, if he has a millimeter, he's going to take that shot. So I think that's what it was, and I think that's what was so impressive, and what I think we're going to see a lot of this year from Indiana is just movement, quickness, off the ball, on the ball, with the ball, whatever, they're moving.
Yeah, Coach Tonsoni, you talked a little bit about some of the adjustments defensively that IU made in the second half. I thought one of the others that they made was smart. Was they really slowed it down from about the 8, maybe 6-8 minutes left in the half. Really tried to slow it down. We're still really effective. I mean, that was during that window that I mentioned when they were scoring really well, but really slowed it down. Try to keep themselves out of foul trouble. Try to keep guys fresh, relatively speaking, by doing that. And we're still really effective. So, you talked about some of the defensive adjustments. What were some of the offensive adjustments that you saw them make from a coaching perspective? And I thought, lots of little things I think you could look at with DeVries that was gives you a lot of hope for the future. But what were some things that stood out to you? And then Coach Moats, I'll throw it to you to kind of ask you the same question.
They have a variety of actions. So if you are face guarding Wilkerson and DeVries, they're going to cut back door off of a variety of actions, whether it's hitting the pinch post or the point, whatever you want to talk, when they hit Alexis or Bailey there at the high post. They ran a play, we'll talk about it here in the half discussion, but a backdoor play for DeVries. When you overplay a shooter, you're going to have a backdoor, and that's when Wilkerson spun. If you remember, they were doing some, DHO or handoff, weave, whatever, and then Wilkerson drives middle, and then he just spins backwards, and the guy's playing DeVries for coming up and getting a handoff 3, and DeVries goes back door, and it was an and 1. You've seen Wilkerson cut back door. You've seen slip actions too when people are trying to jump out. If the screener on a shooter tries to jump out, Indiana slip. That's just great offensive strategy, and when you teach it and emphasize it every day, then you get multiple actions out of different forms of your offense, whether it's a box set or you're running a pick and roll or whatever. When you teach players how to play, they can then take what the defense is giving them. And so I don't know if it was adjustments as much as we have a lot in our arsenal. And the coaching staff has put the players in position to be comfortable taking advantage of those things. You see Sisley with scoring on dunks. Those aren't necessarily designed. You don't design for your 7th or 8th man to run that play and make a call. That's coming organically out of the ball movement and player movement against defense. And I think you see Indiana take some time to get used to it. I tweeted out for Assembly Call, how are we going to handle pressure, full court pressure? How are we going to handle half-court pressure? Because watching the first 2 games of Marquette, very athletic, very good. Shaka Smart has his teams play a lot of pressure defense. and we were able to do that. I like those little rub screens where it's not like a down screen to the corner, but it's two guys kind of stationary, and he just runs off in a quick three on a curl. But I think there's a lot of different actions to take advantage of a variety of different defenses. You saw it in the zone. Their ball screen in the top of the zone. The skip passes were there. So this team is well coached. And early, we'll have losses, and we'll probably find something wrong with the system or whatever else. But you can tell that so far this team is extremely well coached, and I think that's what you saw. The adjustment might have been, hey, let's pass the ball a couple, 2 or 3 times, but you're attacking pressure by attacking the rim early, and then when they did get in foul trouble, they moved the ball a little bit more, but it was precision of cutting and passing that really made that difference in that first half.
Yeah, Coach Moats, thoughts on what you lots to like offensively, but a thing or two that really stood out to you.
It was. I think it's just that reading is such an essential thing, and Coach Tonsoni really kind of brought this up in his. But I would just kind of like to add that what they were doing was on the reading. They understood that if Marquette takes away the cutting or a curl cut or a slip or basically a roll off of an off-ball screen or even an on-ball screen, they take that away, that's going to leave the penetrator open. And that penetrator is then going to be attacking and driving and just being able to find getting to the lane to then make a play, which they could also open a secondary cut. But you keep taking those away, then all of a sudden you have the kickouts available. That's one thing. And one thing that that they did later in the game when they started finding more of those slips, finding more of those rolls to the basket, finding more of those curls, whatever the cutting methodology was, they were finding it because they were because Marquette was just so wanting to take away the perimeter game, and there was nothing really on the backside because of the way that Shaka Smart pressures. So it's leverage. It's almost like judo, where you're able to use your leverage to be able to take advantage of what their strength is, which is pressuring the ball, pressuring the primary passing lanes, and be able to slip behind it and really just do damage to it. That was an impressive thing to kind of watch the guys do, and just making the right decisions out on the floor. I would also throw out that they scored on the press more than Ryan had said. When you get Shaka Smart out of a press, that's great. That's exactly where you want to be. But they were actually getting offense off the press break. And there's been a lot of times with IU where that's not been the case, where IU has really struggled with full court pressure in many circumstances. And now we've seen a couple games, the Baylor exhibition a couple weeks ago, and now this game against Marquette, where IU's press break, because of the number of ball handlers, but also because of the number of shooters they have. When they press break it, they're like, okay, we got the ball wide open on the wing. Lamar Wilkerson can just drain a 3-point shot. So go ahead and press us. That may be some of our best offense is you pressuring us at this point in time. But I would I would add one more thing. There was and we could talk about this in meaningful moments, but just watching Sam Alexis out there and kind of how he's kind of moving out the ball also was impressive. How IU used the bigs, which is very unique, or not maybe different than what we've seen in the past, where they're able to attack closeouts. They're able to drive the ball. They're also able to get isolation situations and be very effective when they do feed the post. Watching him in particular in the first half just really be a secondary weapon alongside DeVries. Yeah, we're going to talk about DeVries with 24 points in the first half, but Sam Alexis helped make that possible because they're going to have to cover him. They're going to tag him on actions, and that just helps open DeVries up in those situations and circumstances.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about the defense a little bit in the first half, but I'm gonna kind of bridge the gap with just some hustle plays. Again, we go back to some of the stuff that DeVries said as he got hired, that he wants his team to walk away talking about how hard they played, and just like the number of hustle plays that they made in the first half in different situations. I wrote down a handful. One was great. Enright, draws that offensive foul on somebody, and DeVries is going nuts on the sidelines, and I think Enright might have given him the hardest high five that anyone has ever given to anybody. But like that this team is fired up by those kinds of plays. There was going into the second TV timeout. Josiah Miles had just come in the game. He hustles to save an offensive rebound. Alexis does the same thing later in the possession, just to kind of save a possession. And then late in the half, Wilkerson gets a steal, goes down on the layup, ends up missing the layup. He missed a number of shots around the basket today. But both Sam Alexis and Trent Sisley are running the floor. Alexis keeps the ball alive, and Sisley ends up with a layup. And when it would have been easy to just sit there and say, this guy's going to score this layup, we're fine. I'll save my energy. I've been playing a ton of minutes and those things. But I just continue to be really impressed with that mindset of what this team is. And I thought there were multiple times in the first half, and we'll talk about some of the second half as well, that that just is really starting to become kind of the – we talked so many years of what is the identity of this team. I do think the offensive stuff is terrific and a breath of fresh air, as we would all agree. But being able to show up and watch a team that's playing really hard and gets frustrated, even in times like Wilkerson late in the game was so mad at himself in a 20-point game that he did something that he thought was wrong and stuff like that. Like just really cool to see. So let's talk a little defense as we go through. IU called for, I don't know how many fouls it was in the first half. 13 maybe? No, 12. Yeah, 13 in the first half, 12 in the second half. Good balance there. I did think, it was one of those where like they're calling everything. I really thought Marquette took advantage of the fact that on the ball stuff, it seemed like the officials were going to reward the aggressor. If you were driving, they seemed to be willing to reward the aggressor. Off the ball stuff, they didn't really care about. And I thought Marquette kind of played it well on both sides. They were really aggressive driving the ball, getting IU's hands on them, and then throwing their head back, doing whatever. And then on the other end, I felt like a lot of grabbing, a lot of holding, but it was all off the ball, and this crew didn't seem overly concerned with that. You did see some of those adjustments, Coach Tonsoni, to your point, later in the half where they really kind of backed off a little bit. I thought Enright just made an adjustment even of himself. He was able to play a long time toward the end of the half by really just like sticking his chest out, keeping his arms out and things like that. And I think that's a good teaching point for them. Like they don't need to do some of the things that they were doing. I think Connerway, just a naturally aggressive guy, I believe his third was kind of poking down on a guy in the post where it's like, yeah, you want to get that, like, can you maybe get that steal, but just an opportunity to understand the situation and things like that. So, Coach Johnson, I know you talked a little bit about, some of the defensive adjustments and things like that. But, if you're walking into the locker room after that first half, like what are you kind of telling the team to do and how do you get them to adjust to how the game was being called? And I guess to spin ahead a little bit to the second half, do you feel like they were able to effectively adjust to that or not so much?
Well, it was interesting because they fouled a lot early in the second half as well. But I think Indiana was over aggressive early in the game. They were fired up. They were going to try to take Marquette away. And what I have seen in the game so far is that Indiana wants to put ball pressure on. They want to get in and deny passing lanes. And so they're really aggressive. But sometimes when you're that way, you get handsy. Right? Your hands get out in front of you, and then good offensive players will swing the ball through and step real close to your leg and force you to hip or to push with your hands. And I think Indiana's got to really work on playing defense without their hands. You mentioned it a little bit but they just backed off. There's different terminology in the game, but I used to call it the gap between yourself and the ball that you're guarding, right? If you're up in their chest, there's no space whatsoever, and that was IU early. And then they were handsy, and then Marquette is so quick and so good at the guards. They had a couple of returning guards, not their best guards coming back, but they had players who had played. And in the college game, guards are skilled on how to draw fouls. And so Indiana is always going to be a little bit out athleticized in games and out-quicked a little bit. You can make up that with your scheme, but they got handsy. I thought they were handsy the other night in their opening game. I thought they were handsy in the exhibition game. So I would have talked to them about, moving your feet, throwing your hands back, right, and taking people with your chest. Now, you can adjust when officials are blowing every whistle. Like, there was actually a foul, Marquette, one time, where the guy I thought just coughed on our IU guy, and the official called too. So it's hard to get players to adjust when you want extreme amount of pressure. But I thought they backed off their player. And then they sat, my terminology now is the gap is between you, help gap, and they sat there a little bit more, not the old stuff that we saw last year, but they were anticipating drives happening because we're not up in them and we're not fouling, and then they were catching people as they would get to the elbows a little bit in their switching game. And so they switched a little bit more, I thought, too, starting at, I think, the 11-minute mark or just the under 10-minute mark, as you mentioned, in the first half. And I thought that continued in the second half. They got some fouls when Marquette made a good adjustment, and they were taking their 4-man and going after Tucker in the post and trying to bully ball into the post. And with, I think Shaka did a good job. Hey, they're calling it tight. Get in the lane and lean in, and let's get into the fouls. And the only way we're going to get back, is, as Coach Crean said on the show, is if we get to the bonus early. So I think it was some of it. Marquette is a good offensive team in drawing fouls, but I also think that Indiana's got to get better without their hands.
Yeah, and I think I felt like Josiah Miles was a guy who at least, like, I thought improved a lot within the game defensively. Like, he was super handsy early on, like got foul almost immediately after he came in the game
in the first half.
But I'm not sure that he made any in the second half. I thought he just made a good adjustment in that. We'll talk about him a little bit more. Had some good minutes from him. I like that you saw some adjustment there in terms of like how they were able to play the game and adjust a little bit to how it was being officiated, but was a little bit rough of a watch. Thought we might not be starting.
It's hard when the officials
4 o'clock, but
I get into this all the time. Some people say, well, it's the players quit fouling and the officials don't. I hate to admit it, but I actually had dinner with a two high school basketball officials last week or a couple of weeks ago. I vowed never to do that, but they'd tell you we're told what to call, and the players need to adjust. But I do think early in the season, I've watched a lot of basketball already, and the officials are really, they're being watched. The points of emphasis, and I think it'll loosen up in all leagues coming up. But it's hard to adjust to that when they're calling everything.
Yeah, there was a stretch though later in the half where I thought anything inside you could just do whatever you wanted later in the first half. It was just like it was your standard Big Ten game really at that point. But so Coach Moats, I'm gonna throw it to you first. We transition to the second half. I know we're excited, but I'm trying to be at least somewhat cautious of not having the show run for 2 hours. So as we transition to the second half, I mean the storyline in the first half offensively was Tucker DeVries. The storyline in the second half offensively was Lamar Wilkerson, particularly after DeVries went out and picked up his 4th foul. I think for a stretch there, Wilkerson like made or assisted on a number of baskets, like right in that, right in a row where IU wasn't doing much of anything if it wasn't on him. And I just thought he was able to fade in, not really fade into the background, but be a secondary player in the first half when DeVries was hot. But man, did he step up in the second half when they needed him. He ends up with 15 points in the second half, 5 of 11, including 5 of 7 on threes. Also had 4 assists in the second half. I thought he did a good job of feeding big guys, cut into the basket on multiple occasions. I don't remember which half they were in. But what did you see from him during those key stretches in the second half when he was really the guy that staved off the runs for Marquette?
A lot of it, I think, first off, a lot of it for him started on the defensive end also, that, he locked in on defense, and he was actually, I think, the one IU player who didn't foul. He had 2 personals. The only one of the starters don't have less than 3, but he really defended hard, which also translated to the offensive end. A lot of it for him was getting downhill. And once he was able to kind of get downhill a little bit, that actually forced Marquette to play him more to drive, which also then gave him more space to be able to maneuver off of screens, off of lifts, wherever he was kind of looking at. Yeah, he missed a few shots in the lane, but he also made a lot of good passes in those situations, especially in that second half when you had DeVries on the bench, as well as also when DeVries was in the game and they were putting more defensive emphasis on trying to keep DeVries from getting the basketball. So now you have an action with Wilkerson on the other side and you're trying to focus on DeVries. Now Wilkerson can pop open. Now, if you're just trying to play him as a shooter, you get up and jam him. But if he's able to get the ball and then drive on you, then this is what IU did very well, was just getting him the ball and then letting him make the proper play. A lot of it's just you have a very smart 4-year guy who is incredibly gifted as a shooter. He's not the greatest rim finisher in the nation, but he is still effective. And he's also a really good passer, and he sees exactly where the play is going to go based on reading the defense. So just by doing those little things and just kind of changing how they played just a bit by getting the ball to him there and then taking advantage again of Marquette's Marquette's adjustments. So many times in this game, what it comes down to is, can you beat the other team's ability to adjust to you? Do you force them to change? Because oftentimes the reason they're changing is because what they're doing, and the reason they are changing is because what they're doing isn't working. So if you can continue to get it so it's not working, then that's effective. The other thing you have to realize is that the reason they weren't doing it to begin with was they thought that was not the best option. So the first option would be to take something away. When that no longer works for them, they try to take the next thing away, and it continues to not work. It's actually your chances of something getting better, or your chances of better outcomes, are there because you're getting a secondary option that a coach is trying to develop. Would you agree with that, Coach? As you kind of think about this, a lot of times that when a coach is adjusting and having to adjust more and more and more throughout the game, a lot of it is because the initial game plan wasn't working as effectively, or we found a wrinkle, or your opponent found some sort of crack in it to beat. And I think all day IU found those cracks.
Yeah, they did a lot of again, how much of that is like play calls versus teaching moments and the players understanding how to make changes and do those things? I'm not sure, but today was a day full of adjustments, and you have to, because you game plan, you watch film, you go into it with an idea, and then something, a guy like Shaka Smart will change up something too and try to take something away. And that's why you have a bunch of stuff in your toolbox, right, that you can go to, even if you didn't have it in your game plan. And so far this year, we are seeing that Coach DeVries, over all his years of coaching and who he was coaching under, has that toolbox of things that he can go to as needed, offensively and defensively.
So, yeah. And I would just say that, yeah, that's exactly kind of where I'm getting at with this. So, yeah, I think it's it's just something where IU is figuring out how to beat their opponents using the using what leverage they have.
Yeah, and Coach Tonsoni, just before you give your thoughts on Wilkerson, I know I alluded to it in some of my earlier comments. Like, there's a play at the end of the game. I think it was within the last 4 minutes of the game. No, it was before that. But he gets inside, plays off 2 feet, misses a shot. He like we said, had a little bit of trouble finishing around the rim today. And then ends up getting called for a foul coming down the other end, and slaps his hands together, just really frustrated with himself in a game that he had controlled in the second half and really played well. And then, stays in the game, gets Marquette called for a loose ball foul, trying to fight after a missed IU free throw up 20 in the last few minutes. And I just think, like, he just is a competitor. And I think, he'll have games where he finishes around the rim better than he was today, but Coach Tonsoni, as you talk a little bit about Wilkerson and his second half, just wanted to lead in with that, because I've been really, really impressed with him.
Both Wilkerson, DeVries, those guys were good players, and they have a chip on their shoulder. I think this whole team early on has a chip on its shoulder that, okay, Iowa's in the same boat, and you got Iowa ranked a little bit ahead of us and all of that, but when you play well at a lower league and then get a chance to come play in the Big Ten, play in Chicago at United Center, you want to show out, and you want to make every shot. That play that Wilkerson missed, the game's over, and he misses a shot at the rim. But I think you see that. I think you see that in Enright. I think you see that in Alexis. I think you see that in Bailey. But what I like about Wilkerson and DeVries is they're comfortable shooting the basketball whenever. They're unconscious, and their coach is unconscious. The quote of the night from the Alabama A&M is, "They got the green light, and I really don't care where they shoot it from." Like, that is as modern a basketball as you're going to find. And when you got people who can then execute the shot and make shots, Wilkerson, press breaker, throw it up. You want to do a diamond press breaker? We throw it, reverse it once, throw the long diagonal, kick it to Wilkerson. That's a layup. Some of these shots are layups, and they're counting for 3 points. And then you want to come out and get in his face, then he can get to the rim. And yes, maybe he didn't hit everything at the rim like he wanted to, but I thought that was a key. In the second half, you get a little worried up 12 or 13 when DeVries picks up his foul. But you saw DeVries hit a 3 when it got down to 10, and then I think you saw Wilkerson hit a 3. They're just going to be daggers all year long. And so I thought that was a big part of the second half, because I thought IU kind of was sleepwalking a little bit early, especially on the defensive end, and then got taken out of some things. And then all of a sudden Wilkerson just goes off. So you have one in the first half, and in the second half you have Wilkerson who can't be stopped, because now you're putting heavy emphasis on DeVries, and then Bailey comes in, is able to do some things too. There are a lot of options here, but Wilkerson. What also is impressive, guys, is he waited his time. Maybe next game it's Wilkerson. It was Wilkerson against Alabama A&M, who had 7 points in like 2 possessions or whatever. We can go back and forth here with those two super shooters, and the other guys aren't too bad either. But Wilkerson owned the second half, and it was really good to see.
Yeah, so Ryan, the only other guy who scored more than 5 points in the second half was Trent Sisley. He ended up with 11 in the second half, had 11 points, 4 rebounds in the second half alone. Finishes up with 15 and 5 rather, and played 30 minutes. And this was a guy who really impressed us all in that Marion exhibition. Then you could just see what the adjustment period was as he goes against Baylor and some of the physicality there, and played fine against Alabama A&M, but wasn't really as involved. I thought a number of the bench guys, him and Josiah Miles in particular, played a lot more than they would have expected to. And he really stepped in, smart cutting, ran the floor well, talked about the play from DeVries in the first half, but really effective second half from him, and just really not trying to do too much. Had a nice drive to the basket in the second half, scored off of what other guys were doing in terms of some of the layups and dunks, and just an impressive showing from him, and a great confidence builder for him to step up in a big game early and to be able to be such a net positive for IU. Thoughts on what you saw from him in just his second real college game?
Yeah, I mean, this is why having talent on the bench is such a big deal. I mean, Tucker DeVries goes out with 4 fouls in the second half, and you're going to have to ride Trent Sisley for quite some time. And they did. He played 16 minutes in the second half. And this is a guy who it's his second college game, and against a real opponent, not an Alabama A&M, and not to knock Alabama A&M, but come on. And he just looked completely at home. And I think the thing about Sisley, as opposed to some of the other freshmen that Indiana's had over the recent years, is they're not relying on him so heavily. So there's not a whole lot of pressure. He can just fit in. He doesn't have to score 20 points a game and carry them, or 15 points a game. And I think that that's a great way. He gets to be a freshman. He gets to come in. He's a talented kid. He gets to fit into the offense, find his spots, pick his battles, but he doesn't have to force anything, because there's guys around him who can all score. And I think that the play of the game from him was that kick out to Wilkerson for that huge 3, where he looked diagonal behind. He was on the block, in the block area, turns around diagonal across on the left side there, and Wilkerson, bangs it in. That was his play of the game. And he had 11 points in the second half, and he had some rebounds. But that assist, I think, was one of the biggest plays of the game, because Marquette had gotten a little momentum. Indiana had a bunch of guys off the floor, a bunch of guys in foul trouble, and it was starting to build, and bang, they hit that 3. As I talked about early, those 3s are momentum killers. They're run stoppers. And he found the open guy, fundamental, threw a great pass right in the pocket, and Wilkerson nailed it. And it's just, those plays are what are going to make Trent Sisley a college basketball player. He's still transitioning from being a prep guy to a college guy, but those little plays, making the right pass, reading the defense correctly, finishing when you've got an open finish, maybe knocking down a 3, those are the things that transition you from being a high schooler to a college player. And you can see it with him. He just seems confident. He seems to be, this is my role. This is what I'm doing. Sometimes I'm going to have to step up a little higher. Sometimes I'm probably going to play a little worse. But right now, he, in the first time they really this season have called on him to step up, he did. And I think that's a really great sign, not just for this season, but for the future too. Trent Sisley, he's going to be a real good player at Indiana.
For sure. Coach Moats, I'll throw it to you for give you the last word on Sisley, and then Ryan, I'll give it back to you before I know you got to run. So I'll give it back to you before we finish up this segment. But Coach Moats, thoughts on Sisley today?
I don't know if we've said this yet, but the kid can defend also. I was watching him playing on the defensive end. They would switch off. He would then take their lead guard. He would take on, I believe it was Ross. He'd get on Ross and just stay in front of him. He was actually probably one of IU's better on-ball defenders throughout the game, because he really didn't foul as much as some of the other guys, and just, again, used his length, used his footwork. And that's a complete player. Now he's a freshman. Yeah, Ryan hits the nail on the head. The guy's, he's learning, and he's going to have good days. He's going to have not so good days. But I do think that you're seeing a guy that, if you're looking to get someone who can play 12 to 18 minutes in a Big Ten rotation, Trent Sisley can step in there. Once Nick Dorn gets back, it'll be interesting to kind of see how how the rotations shift a little. But if you can buy Tucker DeVries 4 minutes here and there, if you can buy Nick Dorn a few more minutes here or there, especially with him coming off injuries, using Sisley and knowing full well that you're not losing anything by putting him out on the court, that's going to like help this program sustain where, you know, what we're seeing right now is just seeing him being able to just contribute, not just the big highlight plays, but the little everyday sorts of things you expect a player to do. So I was very impressed with the way he stepped up today and seeing some improvement over the last couple of weeks since the Baylor game.
Yep. All right. Well, as we close out, arguably the longest segment one in the history of the show, this is what happens when you feel like you've emerged from the wilderness and have that. Oh, I was actually gonna. All right, we'll break and then we'll get back and then we'll get Ryan's thoughts. No, we won't. We will not break. We'll get Ryan's thoughts now. There's no time. These NFL games are finishing up. We're gonna lose them. So, Ryan, I'll give it to you to kind of give your final thoughts and then you can get back to work.
Yeah. We've said this a couple times over the past, whatever it is, like 7 months since we got a new coach, but this is a new day for Indiana basketball. It really is. And I don't know, how they're going to finish this year. They've got some tough games they've got to hit. The Big Ten is really tough, but the way this team plays and the way Darren DeVries' teams are going to play in the future, you can just see it. You can see how it's going to be successful. And it has not taken long for that to be obvious. And it may not always be perfect. There may be games where they miss a bunch of threes and really struggle, and the other team plays fundamental basketball and beats them. That may happen. And this is a thin team right now. They may drop a game because they just don't have the depth and get in foul trouble, whatever. But the way that this team fights and weathers problems is not something we've seen in Indiana in a long time. That foul trouble could have killed them. It didn't. They fought through it. The head coach made adjustments. They brought in other guys who stepped up, who, were able to eat minutes away, even if they weren't, matching what the guys they subbed in for did. They were able to steal minutes. They were able to they were actually able to lengthen the lead with some of their best players out. And just the way this team never gives up, doesn't fight, doesn't shrug its shoulders. You might get a couple bad possessions, but they're always going to bounce back and have something. And it's been 2 games. It's been, and plus the exhibitions, plus, whatever. But we've seen it. This team fights, man. They are not going to take a punch and wilt, and they are not going to get down because things don't go their way. And things didn't go their way for a while today, and they continued to bounce back and then blew out what is a really good program. It's the polar opposite of what we've seen from Indiana for the last 8 years. They blew out a good team. And I think that people need to recalibrate their expectations, not for the team this year. We don't know what this is going to be and how other teams are going to play against them, but recalibrate their expectations for the program. This is different and this is real. And these guys are great. They play a great brand of basketball, and we've got an excellent coach who knows how to scheme and, put things together, make adjustments, and put his team in the best position to win. So I think that everybody should be real excited about this. And I know I am. And also, Omar Cooper, we love you. But I got to go. Love you guys.
See you,
Have a great
Ryan.
rest of the show.
Thanks, Ryan.
Take care, Ryan.
All right. And with that, we will take our first break of the show. And when we come back, we'll continue our breakdown of IU's 100-77 victory over Marquette. We'll point out our haul of a moment from today's game and share a few stat sheet stories as well. You're listening to Assembly Call. Stick with us.
What's going on? It's Christian Wofford. What's the only thing better than an epic buzzer beater? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join my guys Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Call after every IU game. Go Hoosiers.
All right, welcome back to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with the coach, Brian Tonsoni, and Coach Bob Moats. And we are continuing to break down this great IU victory over Marquette in Chicago today. 100-97 was the final. And now it's time for today's Hall of a Moment to highlight some of the key moments that made a difference in the game. And Coach Tonsoni, I will throw it to you first. What's a moment or two that stood out to you?
Well, you had the half-court shot, right? That has to be a moment that is special. I think for me, man, there were so many guys. Like, how do you decide which one particular moment? I think the three by DeVries is a moment for me in the second half that went from 10 to 13. The pressure was starting to mount. You're at a position where I think Marquette could get back in the game if they get a couple more stops and get it down to 6 or 7. And they simply they got the ball to DeVries for his only basket, I think, in the second half. And he came off a little curl and didn't have a whole lot of room. And his confidence, and I think that was the moment for me where I kind of knew this was going to be okay. Not for sure at that point yet, but that kind of stemmed the tide there a little bit. And I thought that was a really good moment of several moments. I don't remember this now, but at 12-19, I have Enright and Coach DeVries' energy. I don't know what happened. I think there was something defensively had happened.
I think that's the one I talked about when he drew an offensive foul. I think it was after that. If it was in the first half,
Okay.
I'm assuming it was around that time.
Oh, it's first half. Yeah, first half. On my notes here, first half. And I said that earlier, that it's just seeing the activity on the sideline from your head coach is a big thing for me. I think that's something that I really have enjoyed in the early stages of that. So those are a couple moments there for me.
Coach Moats, any particular moments you wanted to highlight?
I'll just start with, I think, IU's first offensive sequence where Tucker DeVries runs a ghost action to set the tone for the game. Wilkerson's got the ball, and automatically you're thinking, okay, so what are they trying to do here? And Marquette trying to figure out how to contain Wilkerson. DeVries just slips right by him, gets into that ghost screen position, hits him on the perimeter, 3-point shot. That sets the tone. That just sets the tone, because now it's like, now you got a whole bunch of stuff you're thinking about. You don't even know, I don't know what's on the Marquette scout sheet. I know both those two guys are leading it, and IU, instead of trying to do something cute or trying to do something a little different, they just went right at the two guys at the top of the scout sheet and said, okay, Shaka, how are you going to stop this? How are you going to stop this? And they made and again, by making shots, the world's a lot better. The world's a happier place when your team's hitting. It's miserable when they're missing. You're working a lot less hard when your team is hitting shots, I feel like sometimes, than you are when you're missing, because you're trying to scheme your way out of missed shots. But that was a key component. A second one, I want to just say that there was
Bob. Can I just say something on
please,
that? What I really like about you bringing that up is that scheme. Like, there's so much. I don't know if Tony, high school basketball starts on Monday. He probably doesn't have much time to do film room, so you and I might have to jump in and cut a little bit of this. But the corner to wing, guard to guard ball screen is an interesting concept, right? And what you're talking about there is they didn't set it. DeVries ghosted it. And I think there was a play in the second half where they did the same thing, and Wilkerson got a shot where Wilkerson set the ghost screen. And by ghost screen, it's like you're running up to set a ball screen, but you don't jump stop. You just keep running. And if both defenders go with the ball, then you're going to be open for a quick throwback from the ball handler for a three. And Wilkerson got one in the second half as well. I think that's a good find by you. I wrote that down right away, too. Ghost to DeVries right off the bat. We're talking ghost screens in Indiana basketball, which is another good thing. So I wrote that down. I think that's interesting action for you fans to watch, too, is guard-to-guard ball screens. We normally think of big on small at the high post with a slip or a short roll. We talk a lot about that. But watch for the guard-to-guard or even the handoff threes that Indiana's hit on the wing. Good stuff. So, Bob, yeah, I think that was a great moment. Yeah,
and I would also just throw out, kind of moving on. After DeVries goes down with 4 fouls, he's sitting on the bench, and back to and Wilkerson in this situation hits a 3, I think at the 8:30 mark, and then they go back down on the other end, and they're playing on the defensive end. Josiah Miles goes and blows up, I think it was a handoff action, and just totally blew it up and got the turnover off the play. And that's a moment where it's like, so you're kind of on the ropes. Marquette's still within striking distance, but if you don't execute on both ends. Like if you start finding yourselves trading punches is one thing, but if Marquette gets a 6-point run, how many times have we seen this where IU has a double-digit lead or a team has a double-digit lead and then the team goes on a 6-0 run and then they kind of hold serve for a couple possessions and then they hit another 6-0 run and all of a sudden you're in a dogfight. By doing that, by Wilkerson hitting the 3-point shot, okay, now you got to go defend it, and then you have Josiah Miles, who again your eighth guy on the team right now. He just goes in and makes a defensive play to just take whatever momentum Marquette was going to try and get out of that next possession just totally off the table. I think that actually got them to the under 7 or close to the under 7 timeout.
There was a play too, Coach, where Wilkerson hits a 3 when they went to the 3-2 zone. Once DeVries went out, I think I wrote that down at 12:30 mark. That was key in all of those kinds of things too. Once DeVries went out at 13:15, they tried to go zone. That I don't know why, but maybe with the good 2 shooters out or 1 shooter out and 1 shooter in, you could play zone and disrupt what Indiana did, and they had an answer for it. That's one of the key things. We're talking adjustments. We're talking players. We're talking backing off press. But you had an adjustment. Indiana didn't, need a possession or two to figure out how to play zone offense. They were ready for it.
So much of that, Coach, and I'm glad bringing that up too. Just real quick, that's what Shaka Smart likes to do is just take you at time. He wants to destroy your timing. He wants to decimate your ability to run offense at pace. And IU kept finding ways of being able to run what they wanted to run and get what they wanted to get against a guy that's entire. I mean, hell, his system's called Havoc, right? It's like his old defensive system was called Havoc, was designed to create chaos and completely just blow you up and force you to be second guessing everything and not make you comfortable while they're out the game. He goes to a switch to a zone switch, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, Wilkerson, they found him in pace, hits a 3, in flow, hits a 3. I never felt IU was out of flow today. Did anybody feel that way today? Did anybody feel like IU was just not in the flow of the game?
Maybe a little bit at the very beginning, but I don't think after that. I felt like they settled in pretty well.
You could say a little in the second half to start.
Yeah, the early part, trying to figure out
parts of both halves.
Yeah, just coming out of the break. Yeah, I would agree with that. But take those aside, which are kind of normal for teams sometimes. That's, I mean, whatever's thrown at them, IU handled.
Yeah, the only other moment I'll kind of throw out, this probably a few different things you could reference here, but just a couple ways to talk about Sam Alexis. I thought, again, Reed Bailey picks up 2 fouls in the first minute and 25 seconds. And I think one of the only guys who played significant minutes in the first half and didn't pick up a ton of fouls was Alexis. Now he made up for that by picking up a couple real quick in the second half, but he ends up coming off the bench playing 17 minutes in the first half, scored 9 points, grabbed 4 rebounds. Just thought his activity level continues to be really good. Crean, who I thought was really good on the broadcast, just brought up having watched him some at the Florida practices last year, and kind of reiterating what a talented guy he is. And just kind of got hurt toward the end of last season, squeezed out a little bit at Florida, but a talented player. And he really has continued to be that guy who brings the energy off the bench, ends up in double figures again over the course of the game. And I just thought, whether it was him slipping to the basket, whether it was Wilkerson being unselfish, getting into the lane, throwing him a lob, whatever it was, like, he does a really good job of moving without the ball and knowing that guys are going to find him when there's chances to slip screens or do things like that. We saw a lot of that with him against Alabama A&M. And so I thought that was again the case today. Showed a post move, I think, in the first half where he was able to spin and score over somebody. Just continue to be really, really impressed with him, and they've needed him. I think there's going to be games where IU really is going to lean on him, and there's probably going to be games where they lean on Reed Bailey, and maybe there'll be some where they lean on both. But this was one where I think he was maybe a little bit better suited to handle the way that this game was being played and continue to fight inside. So thought another solid performance from him. So with that, let's take a look at a few stat sheet stories from tonight's game as we go inside the numbers. A reminder that this segment is brought to you by Jackson Hewitt Tax Services. If you live in Bloomington or the surrounding areas and you want your taxes done right, contact our friend and Chat Mob Hall of Famer Megan Mahaffey and her team in Bloomington, Bedford, and Martinsville by calling 812-339-3334. And guys, as you look at the stats, certainly a lot of great offensive numbers. The shooting is terrific. They're 7 of 14 from three in both halves, so they end up 50%. 20 of 24 total from the line, 83%. But what might be as big as anything is 27 assists on 33 made field goals, to go with only 8 turnovers against a really aggressive defense in Marquette. Just that ratio alone, but just the 27 assists on 33 made field goals, you have a real good sense of how they want to play, and they executed that extremely well in this game. Coach Moats, any numbers, any comments on those or other numbers that stand out to you as you look over the stat sheet?
All of that, and I will add three other ones. According to KenPom, 76 possessions in this game. This was a game that was played at a very high tempo against a team that, in Marquette, what their best offense oftentimes, and it's true of most college basketball teams, that your best offense is usually transition, but they get out and get it out and get transition looks with some of the, with one of the best rates in the country. They played basically a game of a high-paced game and ended up with IU ended up with 1.37 points per possession to Marquette's 1.003, basically. So you're running insanely efficient offense. And one of the things we've been watching all year are like offensive rebounds. Like that's been the big concern is IU on the boards. IU did a really good job on the boards, even though Marquette out rebounded them and out second chance pointed them. IU was able to get that back on the turnover area because they almost doubled up Marquette on turnovers. So opportunity points, which if you take the sum of points off turnovers as well as second chance points, both teams are even. I believe IU was at plus 10 to start at the end of the first half. So Marquette did a little better in the second half, especially when they started crashing the boards more and kind of cleaned up their turnover game a bit. But that's a big thing for IU to be able to deal with some of the issues they have with size. And I think IU did really just kind of didn't allow Marquette to use some physical advantages that other teams might have been able to do, or that that we also some issues we've seen in the past where IU just doesn't take advantage of those types of opportunity baskets. So.
Yeah, I mean, Marquette's best offense early in the second half was getting fouled or just throwing the ball up on the. And I think, Coach, you might have tweeted this out from the Assembly Call account at halftime that the first shot defense was really good, struggled a little bit on the offensive glass, and really did to start the second half. Although I think if you probably look back at kind of where those offensive rebounds came early versus late, I think there was improvement within the half there. But
IU was only -4 on second chance points.
Yeah.
So they
ended up with
that's good.
Yeah, giving up 14 offensive rebounds. So But yeah, Coach Tonsoni, any thoughts on the rebounding or any other numbers stand out to you?
Well, you know what? Every team has its areas that are going to be hard to win statistically. So now how are you going to counter that elsewhere, right? So obviously you would love to dominate every statistic. I think in year one when you're recruiting, everyone that you can to field a team, it's really highly unlikely that you can. And so I think we're probably going to see rebound numbers and the offensive and the rebounding being an area of concern most of the year. But, it wasn't really hurtful today. The -4 on the second chance points. I thought Indiana got some key plays on the offensive rebounding too. The thing that you want to watch too is their effort. I think Indiana was blocking out. I thought, as much as they called hand checking and, phantom fouls out in the perimeter, there were people that were pushing in the back and going over the back, and it was really physical in the lane. But Indiana's effort to rebound is there. You see the guards going in to rebound. You see blockouts. It's just that's an area where they're probably going to struggle to win on most days. And where you counter that for me is my number, 37.3% field goal shooting, right? I think that was huge to hold a team down in that area. And then they were only 25% from three. And so, you play a team that can penetrate and you help, and then they give a three. And Marquette coming in the game only shot like 31% from three, but that's how you get beat. We're able to guard the three. The thing is, we gave up 33 free throws and they made 29. So our free throw defense wasn't extremely good if you want to go that. But we've got to learn to play without fouling. If there's two concerns, it's going to be our effort is good on rebounding. We just got to go get the ball or find a way to go get the ball. And we've got to find a way to play that aggressive defense to turn them over and get some points off of turnovers without fouling. And I think those are the two concerns. But overall, you got to turn to the offensive numbers to really enjoy this game with 50% three-point shooting and the free throw shooting and the assist to turnovers. Again, that's the way you compensate, guys, for an area where you're going to be weak. You make sure you're more efficient in those other areas, and IU in 2 games has done that.
Yeah, and just to touch base on a couple other individual numbers as we look at this. We talked about the team assists, but you go to individual. Tied for the lead with 8 were Lamar Wilkerson and Tatum Connerway, who we haven't touched on very much. And then Connor Enright had 5, was next. So that's your starting 3 guards, had 21 assists and 3 turnovers in this game. And I know we haven't talked a ton about Connerway. I think he had 6 of his in the second half, or really Enright. But Coach Tonsoni, any quick thoughts on the kind of dual point guards, if you will?
I've said all along, I thought it's going to be really exciting to see the point guard play. From a defensive standpoint, I think they're doing their job creating havoc. I think they're doing a good job of making sure the ball moves and it gets to where they need to. One thing I encourage people to watch when they're coming down on the fast break. Enright more than Connery, but they're having a sense of where to go with the basketball. They kind of got their head on a swivel. They want to get downhill and they want to get to the rim, but if they can't, they're looking to find a three-point shooter. And again, how fun is that to find three-point shooters? But they both had what did Connery have? 8 assists, I think, right? Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Well, the assist numbers are just crazy. 13, and they both had 2. What was their 3? Yeah, 13 to 3 assist to turnover rates from your 2 point guards. So, I think you got to have good point guard play to win in this league.
All right, Coach Moats, any other numbers you want to touch on before we head to the last segment here?
Touch on this real quick. Tatum Connerway, the team scores 100 points and he scores 4. And when you're talking about your key 3, you're talking Sun Belt Player of the Year last year, strong offensive player. Some of you kind of expecting to kind of put scores, put points on the board. It's really kind of cool to see the fact that IU finds a way to get to the century mark against, again, a power 4, high quality opponent, and one of your guys that you're thinking is going to score a good portion of your points only ends up with 4, doesn't hit a field goal. So you don't need him to go score 20, which I think for most of his career, he's always been in a position where he's had to do that for the teams he's been on. So shows some good personal growth on his point, and also shows just the versatility of maybe a short rotation, but still an effective team being built here for the season.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I think there'll be games when they really need him. I thought he was able to penetrate a little bit and find guys that way as opposed to penetrating looking to score. But yeah, and I also think the fouls kind of took him out of it a little bit. Ends up getting that 3rd in the first half. I just thought that he just couldn't really ever get into a great flow, unfortunately. But anyway, all right. Well, we will take our second break, and when we come back on the assembly call, we'll hand out awards for the game, look ahead to IU's upcoming opponent, and that's all next here on the assembly call. Stay with us. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and start. I think Coach is trying to work out some audio issues on his end, so I'm just going to go ahead and roll back into the final segment. So we are still talking about the 100-77 victory by IU. Great neutral court win for IU. Should hopefully serve them well as we look ahead a ways from now to Selection Sunday, but always good to get a neutral court win against a major conference team. Can't be upset about that. So I'm Andy Bottoms here with the Coach Brian Tonsoni and Coach Bob Moats, and we're going to finish up breaking that loss down, and we'll do that by finishing up with our game balls. And game balls are presented by our friends Allie and James at Bloom Environmental. And they are, Bloom Environmental, they provide expert radon, mold, asbestos, and crawl space solutions to protect homes and improve indoor air quality. You can call them today for a free estimate and mention Assembly Call and get 10% off your system. You can learn more about them at bloomenviro.com. All right, guys. I will, Coach Moats, I'm going to throw it to you first. Who gets your game ball from this one?
Tucker DeVries, just by setting the tone early in the game, and really just putting up a monster first half. And because he did that, was able to kind of free up other guys in the second. Game ball, I think I think you can make a case for Lamar Wilkerson, obviously, but I think DeVries is, my guy, for that one.
Yeah, I think pretty hard to argue that, just based on the tone that he really was able to set early in the game, with the way he played in the first half, really built the lead. And even though Wilkerson, as we talked about, really stepped up for him when DeVries went out, I think he would get mine as well, just for really helping build that lead that they never really relinquished, and hit a big three early in the second half to preserve it. Coach Tonsoni, clean sweep for you?
Yeah, I think it's Tucker DeVries by far.
Coach, your audio. Yeah,
I don't know what's going on. My headphones have died out.
Okay, yeah, your mic is really staticky. So, all right, you're good. We'll keep rolling. So we'll let's see, with Tucker DeVries, that is his second game ball of the season. So he's got 2. Trent Sisley now has 1, and Lamar Wilkerson has the other. As we do my quick math, that adds up 4 games so far. All right, and now it is time for the Hoosier Hustle Award, and this one maybe in some ways a little tougher to pick from. I think we've had that issue. Not really an issue, I wouldn't say, but I think we've had that situation, I guess I would say, in most of the games, which I do think really underscores how this team wants to play and has played so far. So, Coach Moats, I'll throw it to you first again for this one. Who gets your Hoosier Hustle Award today? Lots of worthy candidates, I would say.
Right. I was going to say, at one point I was thinking, well, Sam Alexis looks like a great candidate, and still would be one that we could talk about on this one. Honorable mention. I think Trent Sisley gets honorable mention because of just the way he played throughout the game. I think Connor Enright, you can make a case for Enright throughout the whole course of the game in doing this. But I'm going to go back to Lamar Wilkerson, not just for the scoring, but because, again, not just the 8 assists, but also because, again, I think on both ends of the floor, he hustled and really was a catalyst for making a lot of things happen, and just kind of dug in and played a game that, kind of just set a tone. But again, it's like I really wish we almost want to start giving like tents of awards out on this one, right? It's like you could pretty much just say, here's 8 guys. We can definitely justify all 8 of them in some way, shape, or form. But I'll go with Wilkerson. I'll also add that he stepped up at a time when IU needed a scorer, and that's hustle. He was getting him off of hustle plays.
Yeah, I was a little. I guess I remain. I remain a little torn between Wilkerson and Sam Alexis. I think those are the 2 that it kind of got down to for me. I think with Wilkerson, certainly the scoring, and like I said, just some of his. Just love the fact that he was like still competing in that way, challenging himself, frustrated with himself late in the game that he had helped build that big lead on. With Alexis, though, he steps in, ends up playing 26 minutes, was a plus 34 on the day, 13 and 5, as we talked about, and really stepped up for Reed Bailey. I'm going to lean Wilkerson because he had a team high. He played 38 minutes. It was still playing hard down the stretch. So I'm going to go with him. He actually, because of foul trouble, and again, this speaks to, he was just about the only guy that they that was not in significant foul trouble at some point. But he was the only guy that played more than 30 minutes, oddly enough. So I'm going to go with Wilkerson just for the minutes, the contributions, and a number of different categories. I thought, again, the fact that he's the second leading assist guy was pretty impressive as well. So I'll go with him. Coach, I'm going to throw it back to you. We'll see how your setup is going here. Any thoughts on Hoosier Hustle from you?
Note to self: charge your earphones before you have a long post game show. Everything okay? Can you hear me now? Is it back?
Much better.
Sound great.
Okay.
Sound great.
Yeah. So I changed headphones and it switched my mic to the headphones and not to the standalone here mic. But this is difficult, fellas. It's going to be a long year with the Hoosier Hustle Award, choices here. Alexis is one, Connerway's one, Enright with some plays down the run. I'm going to go with Wilkerson again. I thought, when you have a block, 2 steals, 8 assists to go along with your incredible shooting, he easily could have gotten the first one, the game ball, but I was going to go DeVries before my mic went out there. But those two I thought really dominated the game tonight and are very deserving of both of the awards.
All right. Well, that is Lamar Wilkerson's first Hoosier Hustle of the season. He is in a 4-way tie with Connerway, DeVries, and Sam Alexis. So, but again, great to have so many viable options there. I really thought we didn't touch on him a ton. I know I mentioned a couple plays. I thought Josiah Miles gave him some really big minutes as well. Ends up playing 14 minutes, had 4 points, 3 rebounds, some good hustle plays from him as well. And with that, we'll look ahead a bit to our next game, which is against Milwaukee on Wednesday, it looks like. Time of that game, trying to look real quick here, 7:00 on Fox Sports 1. So those who needed to find a way to watch the game on ESPN, shout out to my mother-in-law. We'll not need to do so on Wednesday, but game against Milwaukee. Milwaukee was among the teams. I don't remember whether they were the preseason favorite in the poll that these leagues do before, but picked as a team to finish close to the top of the Horizon League. They come in 1-1. They beat Hampton at home by 4, lost at Wofford yesterday by 10. They have a game on Monday, tomorrow, at home against Little Rock, and then they travel to IU. So as you look ahead to them, play a really quick tempo. They're ranked 29th right now in adjusted tempo. So could be another fast-paced game. IU currently favored, at least as of when I think Coach put the run sheet together, by 22. That is up to 24 now based on how IU played today. And Milwaukee is currently 238 in KenPom. So, again, a team I think that will be one of the better teams in the Horizon League when it's all said and done. And so, more of a test than Alabama A&M was in that season opener, but a game that IU should be able to win comfortably. Other notes from here from Coach, 3-guard lineup. Early success from the 3-point line from their starting wings. They've got Seth Hubbard, who's 4 for 8 from 3, Stevie Elam, who's 6 of 12. And then they got a 6'10" big guy, which will be, interesting. A guy who numbers show draws fouls. We certainly saw what IU did today from a fouling standpoint. And so we'll see if they can keep him in check from that standpoint. So we'll be back to talk about that game on Wednesday night. Again, 7:00 Eastern, the tip for that one. All right. And with that, we're going to wrap things up here with last call. A reminder to check out our friends at homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code HOME23 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. And with that, it is time for last call. Coach Moats, I will throw it to you first. Final thoughts on IU's 100-77 win over Marquette.
Before I go there, I want to quickly just say about the Horizon. I thought after reading all my Purdue friends talking about how great Oakland was, that Oakland was like the UCLA of the Horizon League after Friday night, because they actually underperformed and dropped 6 spots in KenPom because because of that performance. But that being said, I'm glad to see that coming on Wednesday. I think building out of this, IU gets a couple bye games here before the next Power 4 test or Power 5 test, which is Kansas State, right on starting on Thanksgiving week there on the 25th of November. So you've got some time to kind of work on some stuff. I'm interested to see if Nick Dorn comes back and see if they can get him back in some of these bye games at this point of the season, just to start getting him kind of more into the rotation. We've been hearing it's a possibility that he may return, but it would be a key added depth piece for IU to just kind of run, to start getting him kind of back, getting his sea legs back before you get into the difficulties that you're going to see Thanksgiving to Christmas with Kansas State. Then you got Louisville and Kentucky to think about going forward, and then the Big Ten season, obviously, which is the main attraction.
For sure. Yeah, I was kind of glad they didn't bring Dorn back today. I thought it would have been tough to kind of come into this game after not having played. So, but to your point, hopefully he can get a little bit of running over these next few games, hopefully, and be back at it when things ramp back up. Coach Tonsoni, final thoughts from you.
Yeah, we all said after the exhibition games in Alabama A&M, how's this going to play against better opponents? And I think we saw that today, that this offensive scheme, defensive scheme, and this roster can compete with talented teams. While Marquette is not necessarily a top 25 team that we'll see in the Big Ten, it does have some players that have been in a system under Shaka Smart for a long time that have played winning basketball and are expected to win. We're good athletes, and Indiana dominated today. So it's an absolute incredible ending to a wonderful weekend. We all were stressed with 151 to go yesterday in the football game, and Heisman Doza pulled out a win. And then we, wake up this morning and go watch a little basketball, and we see a really good performance. And I think it is style, and the coach and the players are kind of traditional IU guys. They shoot, they dive on the floor, they hustle, they show good emotion. And I think this team, I saw a comment in the chat, I'm really close to buying in on this DeVries thing. So many of us have been hesitant to buy in after the last 8 years. I bought in a little bit earlier than most, but you're starting to see some people really enjoy this style of basketball. And I hope, and I think we will, even in games where we don't perform well and where we lose basketball games. But I think Coach DeVries is off to a great start. I think the players are off to a great start. And it really makes these shows absolutely awesome to do again, and energy, because you're talking about basketball. We're talking about ghost screens. We're talking about adjusting gap and pressure and doing those things. And we're talking about a team that is executing those things. And even when they do them poorly, we know that there's great effort. So this is I don't think you could have scripted a better start for Indiana basketball than these first two games. And even the exhibition win against Baylor, add that in. And I think that fans will be coming back quickly to this program with this type of play.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I just think, and we talked about this team really being, showing up and playing the way that he's talked about wanting his teams to play. And this was a game where everybody that was in there was ready to step in and contribute. You got in foul trouble, guys stepped up. You played all 8 rotation guys who played at least 13 minutes, scored at least 4 points, grabbed at least 2 rebounds, and had at least 1 assist. Just a really top to bottom team effort. Great opportunity for guys to step up and contribute, play more minutes than they may have expected, like maybe a Sisley or a Josiah Miles, and the 2 guys who you expected to be the stars in DeVries and Wilkerson. Each took a shift. One took the first half, one took the second, and but really showed up and played the way that we had heard about and we've now seen for ourselves. And a really solid game. And I think Marquette's a team that probably going through some growing pains. I know they don't have all the new players, but they've got guys stepping into expanded roles. But I could very easily see them being a top 4 team in the Big East and being somebody that this win looks even a little bit better at the end of the season than it does right now. But really good for IU to be able to jump on them, just as we talked about at the beginning, methodically build that lead and then hold on to it. Withstood a couple small runs and never let the lead get below 10 points. And so I thought really just start to finish, great start to things for this IU team. They go back home with a few bye games, get a chance to work on some things, put some things on film and figure it out as things start to get a little bit tougher after that. But really excited about what we've seen so far. Certainly better to start well than to not, and a really exciting weekend, as Coach mentioned, with the football team, and that continues to be such a positive story, and hopefully the basketball team can ride a little bit of that wave as well. But so far so good with Coach DeVries. Again, really impressed with some of the adjustments and just the effort that this team gave throughout. So great way to finish it out with a win. And so we look ahead to Wednesday, and we will be back with everybody then. But for today's show, that will do it. A show that was 1 point on pace for like 4 hours. We're in under an hour and a half, so good for us. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. Don't forget to go to substack.assemblycall.com to join our free email newsletter. Thanks to Bob Thompson for the music you hear on the show. Special thanks to John Ringer of rigdesign.com for designing our logo. Thanks to my mother-in-law for Get me into ESPN. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU Hoops with you again on Wednesday night.
Take it from me, Jordan Halls. Keep your elbow in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
Hey, the show's over. Here I come, Coach Tonsoni.
2-hour
Okay.
show.
Fun.
Good
2-hour
stuff.
show. Who does that?
Yeah, you guys are just getting started at the 2-hour mark.
I mean, yeah, it's like
They're just done. They're just done with the intro at one
we're
point.
done with the
They're
intro.
they're just
At
warming up.
124. We're just warming up. What are you talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, fellas.
That was fun. That
Sorry
was
about missing the segment 3 there. I got to learn not to change headphones in the middle of the show, that it would shut off my mic. But
Oh, you're good.
Other
You're
than
good.
that,
I just
what
knew
a-
something was going on. So anyway,
yeah, what a great weekend. Like I wasn't nervous about today. But it's one of those, man, I want to win. I want this win. I don't want anyone doubting this program. And boy, did we not only get a win, we just played well and just unbelievable.
Nice surprise. It was a nice surprise to see that. I mean, because again, I was hoping, hey, nail biter's fine. Even if we lose this one, if it's a couple possessions, it's fine. It's recoverable. And then when they went on that run at the end of the first half, it's like, okay, maybe this team is kind of where maybe going to be closer to the ceiling than the floor is what I'm thinking. And I do think that this is a 4. This is a high 4, low 5 ceiling team. I believe that in my bones. I believe that.
could very well be.
It's
Keep
early.
getting better and see what happens. But, hey,
I mean, it's
All
just
right,
a start,
everybody, I
right?
got to go.
See you guys later.
all right. See you. Thanks, guys.
Talk to you guys Wednesday. Yep. Bye.
All right. Bye.